Hello, friends, and welcome to What the Fringe, the podcast dedicated to all things Fringe theater. I'm your host, Lauren Hance. Each week, I visit with a Fringe artist to hear all about their endeavors and gain insight into their process. This week, I'm visiting with Olivia Raine Atwood of Faking It and Oops. It's January 2020, and Liv goes on an undercover mission evaluating New York City hospitals. She's totally not supposed to talk about it. Does doing a show count? Shh, Liv is faking it. Looking for love? So is Liv. But she's a professional matchmaker. Her 9 to 5 is doing just that for other people. She's got some stuff to say, advising clients on their horrible photos, taking down grandpas in their 70s who want to date women in their 30s, and making matches she's immediately wished she could undo. Come behind the scenes at your least favorite dating apps and meet the girl who's pulling the strings in Oops.
I feel like I've always known I wanted somebody else on my team and in my corner, but I just didn't know what role that was. I think for many years I thought it was agent or manager is what I thought it was. And I think most actors, that's what you're kind of fixated on. Last year I learned that it was not the agent and it was not the manager. What I really needed was twofold. I thought a publicist. Firstly, I thought I need a publicist. And when I did hire a publicist, shout out to Mia at Portrait PR, that was really game changing because I realized, oh, this is how I get people to come to my show. And then take that one step further, what you really actually need is a producer. Because the producer's role is to drive people to your show. And as an artist, as a Fringe artist, I think we all know the hardest thing is getting people to come. Right? That's the hardest thing.
Olivia Raine Atwood is a comedian, matchmaker, writer, and fitness instructor who splits her time between Los Angeles and the Los Angeles of the East, New York. Olivia has been called riotous by Time Out New York, and her comedic duo has been hailed as a modern-day Lucy and Ethel by Stage Betty. Known for her terrific and delightful physical storytelling, Olivia would make coffee nervous, which is the most accurate description of herself she has ever read. Her matchmaking company has been featured on NPR, WNYC, and Elite Daily, among others, and won the 10,000 Rookie of the Year prize at the Icon Startup Awards. She has developed several full-length shows and has received rave reviews from New York Magazine, Time Out New York, The Huffington Post, DC Theater Scene, Vulture, Stage Betty, Fringe Review, and The Reviews Hub. She made her off-Broadway debut in July 2023 with Live Live at the Soho Playhouse, and then in December returned to Soho with Underprepared and Overhydrated. In 2024, Liv toured Faking It across the globe from Hollywood to Denver to New York City to Edinburgh Fringe to London. She scooped up a nomination for the Hollywood Stagecraft Select Award at Hollywood Fringe in 2024. She won Best Solo Show from What the Fringe podcast. And at Edinburgh Fringe, she received exclusively 5, 4.5, and 4-star reviews. She was also named a Pick of the Fringe winner from the Greenwich Theatre, and her show transferred to Off West End in October. In 2025, she and her new co-producer, Rob Howard of the Barrow Group, will be taking the show on a national tour before heading abroad again. When not performing, writing, or matchmaking, Liv is teaching fitness to the already fit people of Los Angeles for an arguably absurd amount of hours. If you're wondering where she is, she's probably lost. Olivia, welcome to What the Fringe.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited.
I am so excited. So we met last year at Denver Fringe, but not like at a Fringe bar. We met during a show. Our dear friend, Dame Dada, invited us up on the stage to play a game, and we had no idea what we were getting into. And we got into an epic battle of battle tits. It's exactly what people think it is. It's Battleship, but with boobs.
We didn't know what we were being called up on the stage to do. We were just called up on the stage.
And then we're like, we're going to touch each other's boobs. And you and I like looked each other in the eye and we're like, all right, we're doing this. This is, I'm okay. You're okay. Let's move forward.
It was Fringe. It was definitionally Fringe. It was like, you're on the stage. It was, I don't know what time it is. It could have been 1:00 in the afternoon. It's like, you're on the stage with a stranger and you're going to lock eyes and go like but we did it. We did it.
We did it. And now we forever are bosom buddies.
We're bosom buddies. We are. for life.
Exactly. And then I got to see your show and I loved it. Obviously, gave you an award last year for best solo performance. You're such a funny, funny gal and can't wait to see your new shows this year. So I'm just really, really excited to have you here.
Thank you. And I'm really excited to see your show too, because I think we're going to overlap at other festivals this year and I'm going to be able to finally see you, which I'm so excited about.
All right. So I was looking over your resume and we talked about in your bio that you are passionate about quite a few things. I mean, obviously theater, but writing, you're a very skilled writer. You're super into fitness. And you're also into matchmaking. It's like this gamut of passions.
Wide ranging.
Yeah. How do you balance all of these passions?
I like to think that they all intertwine and they all connect and inform each other. For example, fitness, I'm always teaching over a microphone and always making jokes and telling stories in class. So I do have a captive audience that I can test out material on, which I really do all the time.
That's great.
So I think of fitness as it's really just performing, right? It's still just performing and it's still keeping the energy up. And it's so the parallels to teaching fitness and performing and like theater are just too many to count. Like it's so numerous. And then matchmaking also has parallels with fitness because both are coaching. In both situations, I'm coaching you and it's a collaborative experience for you to like be your best self. So either I'm yelling at you over a mic in class or I'm like yelling at you over Zoom to go out with the guy that I want you to go out with. So I think there's so many parallels and quite literally, a lot of my fitness clients will become matchmaking clients and a lot of my matchmaking clients will become fitness clients. Like there's so much crossover between those two worlds. And then, of course, I'm writing about everything all the time, constantly, because I have so many stories from everything from working in fitness, from being a matchmaker. I've always been an essayist. Not to compare myself to David Sedaris, but to aspirationally compare myself to David Sedaris, I would love to be like David Sedaris. And I write a lot of long form comedic essays about all kinds of things. And so I'm writing all the while as I do all of my various jobs.
And I would affirm that you're very funny. Your writing is very good. I'm a writer and I mean, not to be like, I'm so great, but I do recognize great writing and I appreciate great writing. And that's one thing I actually wanted to talk to you about was what's your process like? Because I think you have a really good knack for processing the events that have happened to you and then retelling them in a really funny and entertaining way. I mean, ingrained in my brain is you like moving between two vending machines. People have to see the show, faking it, and just creeping down the hallway. I mean, it was hilarious. It was so funny. So take me through like your process. Obviously, this is a thing that you're really, really passionate about. So how do you work on that? Taking your real life events and making them a story.
So it's actually quite interesting because I feel that my process has changed very dramatically through the years because I used to be really an actress and a comic actress. And that was mostly what I did. And I'm also a storyteller. So I just tell stories off the cuff, constantly. All of the stories that you heard in my show have been stories that I've just told through the years. And I've told them so many times, they almost become verbatim. And a lot of the language becomes almost like it's written, even though it's not at all. So when I started doing my shows, I began doing things in my friends' living rooms where I would just gather everyone and tell a night of disconnected stories. Literally, people would sit down and I would just be like, I would tell a story and then I would tell another story and then no through line, no nothing, just isolated stories. So like faking it, the central story of me pretending to have COVID to test New York City hospitals, which is the premise of faking it. That was like an isolated story. Me being really bad at math is another isolated story. They were all separate. I was doing that for a long time. I had a combination of stories that I just told and stories that I had written, had typed out. I ended up moving to doing essay shows where I would just read my essays. But in doing that, I lost a lot of my performance because my background, as I said, is in comedy and theater and comedic acting. And so when I was doing the essays, a big piece of feedback I was getting from people who have seen me through the years was, you're not performing anymore, you're reading and your writing's very strong, but we missed you moving. I'm also quite a big physical comic, as you described the scene with the vending machines. That's another big thing that I do. So jumping from the essays, I had to try to figure out a way to blend all of my worlds. And that's really where Faking It As It Is Now came into play, because that was my first real attempt last year at taking my stories, taking my physical comedy and my acting background, taking my essays and putting it all in one pot and stirring it up. And a little known fact, I debuted Faking It at Denver Fringe last year at the beginning of June. That was the first time I had ever performed that show in front of an audience all of the way through. I had not finished that show until maybe like a week prior. I was like still memorizing it and I was backstage at Denver Fringe with my script, like reading it obsessively. I even carried my script in my pocket at Denver because I was so worried I was going to forget literal lines. That was literally my first time trying to do a full-length hour show without reading, without pulling all of those elements together. So that process was pretty shocking and really challenging last year.
Well, you killed it. You knocked it out of the park. And it's really fun. It's fun to hear how everybody works and what they do. And I would affirm that. I'm sure if people heard you just reading and they lost the performative element of it, because that is part of your storytelling, is kind of how physical you are. So I really can't wait to see the show again, to see how it's grown since I saw it.
Yes. And I think that you'll find, and I mean, I'm sure this is true for all Fringe artists, we perform our show so many times. I think my show now, almost an entire year later, is night and day from the show that you saw. As you get more into it, you grow into it in all kinds of ways.
Absolutely. Well, I'm every year I try to like up my acting is kind of what I do. And I work with different people just to kind of keep tweaking it and making sure that it's kind of where it needs to be for that year. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, you are a really funny, quirky gal. I'm sure you get that all the time, but you're very funny. I keep saying that. How did you learn that you were like funny?
Yeah, what I think is interesting about that question is I was a really shy kid, which I think is just very classic for actors generally. It's like, oh, well, I was like really shy, whatever. But I was really shy. And somehow, despite being really shy, I knew that I loved performing somehow. My families were very artistic. My parents have been taking me to shows since I was, little, like whatever. And just somehow early on, I just knew that I wanted to be on the stage. But the first real memory that I have of this, obviously I was doing stuff in elementary school, but in the 6th grade, I joined the speech team. If you're not familiar with the speech team, speech and debate is a really big thing in high schools generally. And speech is kind of like competitive acting, where you memorize a selection of a book or a play. You condense it to between 7 and 10 minutes. I think in middle school, it's 7 minutes. And then you tour the country performing and doing all the voices and playing all the characters. And in the 6th grade, I joined the speech team. And I was working with a coach who was a high schooler. And she gave me a play to read, to do, that I didn't like and I didn't think was funny. And I decided that I wanted to do Junie B. Jones. And she had like cut the script of the play that she wanted me to do. And I just remembered reading it and being like, this isn't me. Like this, I don't know. I don't like this. And I kind of went rogue and was like, I'm going to do Junie B. Jones. So I like cut a version of it. And I went to my first tournament and I won the whole tournament, and I was like 11 years old. And I just remembered being like, I knew that I could do that. And my coach, certainly people didn't think I could because I was so shy and timid and like meek kind of, but I just knew that I could. And so I did. And then after that, I was really kind of off to the races. Like that had just gone so well. It really is a core memory for me when I think of being on that stage and them announcing that I won. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. And then that was really it for me. I just realized, I was like, hey, like, I think I might be good at this. And that was really that.
I'm a big speech and debate. Like I did speech and debate in high school. I coached speech and debate. Like, so I know as soon as you said that, I was like, yes, spirit animal. Well, let's talk a little bit about your matchmaking, because that's another, I think, very interesting job. Not a lot of people have. How did you find yourself in the world of matchmaking?
So the matchmaking thing is really something I never would have seen coming. It was a complete accident. It happened during COVID, as everyone was. I was laid off of so many different jobs. So many of companies closed. Obviously, I work in fitness and I work in the theater, and both of those industries disappeared overnight. And so I had nothing to do. I was bored at home. And I decided it would be fun to set people up on blind phone call dates through my Instagram. I'm not an influencer. I don't have a zillion followers. I was just like, haha, we're all at home. DM me, I'll set you up on a fun blind phone call date. I was sort of inspired by Love is Blind because everybody was watching the first season of that at the time. I posted that on Instagram and it just blew up in ways I couldn't have anticipated. I got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of messages from people. Everybody wanted to be set up in April. I'm actually going to a wedding of a couple that I set up in March 2020. They're getting married in literally almost exactly a month. So like real marriages came from this. And the matchmaking has just grown. I mean, my company is as a full LLC, like it's still operational. Now I'm mostly coaching. I now crazily have experience date coaching, which is very bizarre and upsetting given that I don't think I'm like a love expert over here, but I do date coaching. And now I actually work for a bigger dating app as a matchmaker for them. So I still run my coaching through the Love Pool, which was my old job. And now I matchmake for another company. And yeah, it's crazy. I never would have expected to be a matchmaker. I never would have expected to have success as a matchmaker and have like real couples and marriages and relationships that I've created. It's honestly, it feels like too much power sometimes. Like I'm like, whoa. I did not expect this to happen. Like, children will be born because of me. I don't know how I feel about that. That's like really a lot. Like I can't be shouldering that responsibility. Like I'm a liability. Like me, I'm not sure. And now I think people think that I have this like magic power, which I don't. I would like to say for the record, anybody listening to this podcast today, I don't. I cannot just find you, your husband and or wife and or person. I do not. I don't. I've done it before and I'll probably do it again, but like I don't, there's no rhyme or reason. Like it's random. I don't know. Yeah, my life has really taken quite an unexpected turn. And I would not have predicted if you told me back in March 2020 that in March 2025, 5 years later, I would truly and really be taking this podcast call in between matchmaking clients. Like I have calls after this for clients and I had calls before this for clients. And I cannot believe that. But here we are.
So I feel like your show Oops has maybe been ruminating for a few years due to all of the matchmaking that you've been doing. So how did you decide to finally put all of your little stories into a show and be like, this is the time to do Oops?
A great question. I would give full credit here to my mother. My mother has been bothering me about doing a show about matchmaking since I started matchmaking. Even with Faking It, she's been like, yeah, Faking It, great show. But she's like, but your real show is about matchmaking. She's like, that's the real show. And I don't want to say that I've been resistant to it, but I guess I've been a little bit resistant because matchmaking and love and dating and relationships, even though so many of my essays and so much of me and my past has been stories and funny stories, about my like love life or lack thereof, I think it feels in a way more vulnerable to put that type of thing on stage. So I've been like, I don't really want to touch like dating. But at the end of the day, mothers know best. And my mom is right. And it is a show that I have basically been creating without even knowing it for years and years and years. And I have, like I said, all of these essays from years ago. I mean, I did a workshop in 2019 with the fabulous essayist Megan Daum in New York. And my essay that I workshopped was called I Love You, Period. And it was a full essay about my 3 experiences with people telling me that they loved me. And I had never had good luck with the phrase, I love you. And it was chronicling the 3 times I had heard it. And this is a full essay that I did at this very elite essay workshop to be submitted to Vogue and GQ and whatnot. And that was in 2019. And now I'm going into that essay, pulling elements of that to put in this show that I'm going to be taking on the road. So in many ways, this show and matchmaking is not an accident, even though it feels like a complete accident at all times. It's been percolating. This pot has been on the stove. It's been bubbling. And now here we are.
What can we expect from the show? Like, because I would think, I can feel like the vulnerability, because if you're sharing other people's love stories, that's very vulnerable. And then your own stories, which I think is a little bit easier to tell because it's your own story, but you're telling somebody else's story and they're like, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that to be out in the world, or, so what can we expect from Oops?
So Oops is really going to be a return to my roots, because I have strayed a bit with faking it. Obviously love faking it, but I, as discussed, am an actress and a theatrical person. And I think, and this is something we could talk about later, but I think that genre with Fringe is very fascinating and very interesting, because as your audience may know, when you go to a Fringe festival, you have to pick your main genre and then you can pick your subgenres. But that often denotes where you'll be in the program. So at Edinburgh Fringe, I'm in the comedy section, which is great, but I'm not a stand-up. So if you come to my show expecting stand-up, you're not getting that. I'm a physical comic. I'm using lights. I'm using music. I'm not interacting with the audience. I am to some extent, but I'm not doing classic crowd work. Faking it rode the line a little bit more of stand-up and theater. It was really a bit closer to stand-up, even though I'm not a stand-up. Oops is going to be more of a swing back to my theatrical roots. So there's going to be more characters. There's going to be more voices. There's going to be more costumes. I am going to be paralleling my dating life and my experiences with love, juxtaposed with me giving advice to my clients and working with my clients. And I'm going to be going back and forth between those two things and hopefully weaving everything together to really, at the end of the day, tell you how I feel about matchmaking and how I feel about finding myself in this role. But it's definitely going to be more of a theatrical experience. Still in the comedy section, I've decided after much rumination, but it's going to be way more of a theatrical storytelling experience.
I cannot wait to see it. I'm very, very excited for this show.
You and me both. I'm excited to see it too.
You're like, I can't wait to see what's going to happen. Are you going to have your script in your pocket on your first show?
It will be debuting in June at Hollywood. Script will be in pocket. We're going to be figuring it out along the way. So I'm also excited to see what happens. Watch what happens live. That's what's going to go.
You've got it. You've got it. Well, let's talk about faking it again. So again, another unique job. I think for actors, kind of like a standardized patient, which is kind of what you were doing, is not uncommon work for actors. There's a lot of my friends here in Houston that do that. But for people that may not know, you go in and pretend to be a patient with some kind of ailment to help the doctors work through whatever it is they're working through. But this one was January 2020. I don't want to give too much of the show away. And you, Olivia Raine Atwood, were selected to help the hospital deal with a possible COVID outbreak. So I can't remember in the show you talk about how they selected you, but how did they select you? How did you feel about it? Did you have any clue that COVID was going to shut the world down?
No. I had been working for the hospitals, like you said, as a standardized patient. Well, I was an unannounced standardized patient, which is a newer program that doesn't run at all hospitals, where I was testing the doctors, but they didn't know that I was an actor. When a doctor works with a standardized patient, they know that they're working with an actor and they're being tested and evaluated. So I was the secret shopper version of that. I had been doing this for years. I had friends at the hospital who worked in the department that I was employed by. And so when there was this crazy new virus coming around, I came to mind because I had really been a regular at the job. And I was quite used to doing this type of work and going in and writing the reports and whatnot. And so it was like a new special mission for kind of one of their classic employees. I had no idea what I was walking into. I thought it was just a fun I was like, yeah, special project, like absolutely. And it was so fun for me as an actor. It was a new challenge, and I was meeting, and I talk about a lot of this in the show, but I was meeting with doctors and people on staff about like the symptoms of this thing and like how I should play them as an actor, like how I should play them. It's crazy thinking about it now, and honestly, the show only scratches the surface of this experience for me. The show, as you know, just takes you through really, really one day, one hospital visit. And obviously I did this for 3 months before the world shut down. And I think the most interesting part of it, and I hope kind of what I touch on in the show, is I am an unlikely person to have this job. I don't know math. I don't know science. I'm not a doctor. I'm an actor. I am academic and smart in many ways, but I am not at all going to be like going to Harvard Med and, doing that whole thing. So to be chosen for this and to be the one really on the front lines reporting back to teams of doctors, me, is like is shocking. And so the show, and honestly, this draws parallels to Oops, it's kind of like what happens when someone who is not in this world or not in any world is suddenly dropped into a world that they do not belong in and are given quite a lot of responsibility. And similarly to Oops, which is coming, what happens when someone who is unlucky in love or views themselves as kind of the wacky aunt who will never marry and whatever, what happens when that person becomes a matchmaker? And I think all of my shows deal a lot with that juxtaposition, Faking It being really the prime and first example of that.
Yeah, it's such a fun show. But you say, I don't know why I was chosen, but obviously you're a great improviser, you're a great actor. You have a really sensitivity to like reading people, which I would think you'd have to do for matchmaking. And then you do have like a degree in English. I saw that. So the writing the reports, I mean, you don't know the technical specs.
The writing of the reports, I think a lot of people were just whipping off a couple sentences. I would be in the room with the computer writing a whole, like I was like, do. Like I would be in there for genuinely like 90 minutes writing my report. And they would say to me like, yeah, like Olivia's reports are really strong. Honestly, probably my supervisors were annoyed. They were probably like, this girl is writing just novels for us right now.
That's great. You're like, the doctor sauntered in. He looked at me. His gaze was icy cold. I knew he wasn't going to pay attention to my symptoms.
So truly, I've read some of my old ones, like because I have a lot of them on my computer, and I've read some of them, and I'm like, what am I? I'm describing what I'm wearing. I'm describing what they're wearing. Like, Olivia, what are you doing?
That's amazing. I bet they were like, we need to book Olivia because I just want to read her reports. I just want to see what she's going to say today. Like, she's fascinating.
Exactly. She's fascinating. I was their study. They were studying. No, they were studying me.
Exactly. There's going to be a report that comes out on actors and writers and how they work. And it was somebody, it's like a whole meta thing that's happening. And it's going to be a show at Edinburgh that performs after you. Okay, we have lost our minds. So how are people responding to Faking It? Because it is a really, like, that is very unique. It's a very unique position that very few people in the world had an opportunity to do. So what are people walking away from the show with?
I think there are a couple of different things that I hear. A lot of the time, the main thing that I hear is, I didn't know that this was a job. Like, I didn't know this was a job. And I'm like, yeah, me neither until I had it. I didn't know it was a job either. So I think one of the main things I get is like, you just don't realize how many little odd, strange worlds there are out there. And I mean, I feel this way. I always used to feel this way about speech and debate. There's this whole universe of people doing this thing every single weekend. And spelling bees are another example. There's this whole unique world. And personally, I've always had an interest in learning about these types of unique worlds and being like, wait, you do what now? I mean, any kind of underground competition where you're like, the time and hour and energy that people are putting into this and the entire ecosystem created around this has always fascinated me. So I think that something about Faking It touches on that for people, where they're like, I didn't know about this underground world of evaluating doctors and ways in which our doctors are being trained. And I think it also hits close to home for people because everyone's gone to the doctor's office. everyone's gone to the doctor's office. And so there's a commonality here of my experience in, meeting with the doctors, and we've all seen them wash their hands and dry their hands off. And whether or not we know it, they are supposed to do that so that we can see. So if you've ever seen a doctor do that when you're in for your physical, they're supposed to be signaling to you, my hands are clean, by washing them in front of you. And that is something they've been trained to do by people like me being in the room pretending to be a patient and observing that and putting it in my notes in far too wordy and verbose of a way, as established. But anyways, I think that there's something about faking it that touches on that. I love learning about this unique world. And then I think the second thing that I get most frequently after that is, why you? And, you've kind of touched on this as well, but I am such an unlikely person to do this. I think that the other thing people walk away thinking is like, holy smokes, this girl, seemingly unequipped for this position, did this job. And I do think that people understand the heart of my show, which is that you can be not a match for something and still do it really, really well and still use your skills to be successful. And I think those are the two sort of sides of the coin that I get a lot.
It's a fun show. So people need to go see it.
They still can.
I know, they still can. You're touring this year. You just signed on with a new producer that you met at Edinburgh last year. So a lot of most Fringe artists just self-produce. There's like the world of people producing their shows. So it doesn't happen as much in America. That's not a very common thing. It happens a little bit more kind of outside of the American Fringe system. So how did you get connected with a producer, and what does that relationship look like?
So I met my producer, Rob. He came to my show at Fringe. I think he came the first week maybe, and he was there producing another show from the Barrow Group. And I don't think that he had any intention, or maybe he did, maybe he was sort of looking for shows to produce, but he just really liked my show. He saw 85 shows that summer and he really enjoyed mine, thought it was one of the stronger ones that he had seen, and was interested in working together. What I think is important, or something that I would like to impart to Fringe artists just generally, is twofold. One, I always knew I needed help, but I didn't know what help I needed. And this goes for just general acting, right? You're always looking for an agent, a manager, a publicist, what have you. And I feel like I've always known I wanted somebody else on my team and in my corner, but I just didn't know what role that was. I think for many years, I thought it was agent or manager is what I thought it was. And I think most actors, that's what you're kind of fixated on. Last year, I learned that it was not the agent and it was not the manager. What I really needed was twofold. I thought a publicist, firstly. I thought I need a publicist. And when I did hire a publicist, shout out to Mia at Portrait PR, that was really game changing, because I realized, this is how I get people to come to my show. And then take that one step further, what you really actually need is a producer, because the producer's role is to drive people to your show. And as an artist, as a Fringe artist, I think we all know the hardest thing is getting people to come, right? That's the hardest thing. And to be dealing with that while you're also dealing with writing, performing, rehearsing, doing all the things it takes to get your show off the ground, marketing, posters, photo shoots, blurbs, what have you, being able to hand the load of getting people to show up to somebody else is, in my opinion, the biggest relief that you can have as an artist. The other thing that I think is really important, and I got this advice from someone about a year ago when I was really focusing on trying to find a manager. A friend of mine said to me, Liv, honestly, what you have to do is focus on the work and the rest will come. Focus on the show and the rest will come. And I would also like to impart that advice to people thinking about who they might need on their team, because every team member that I've had ultimately has come from having a good show that got people's attention. And that's how Rob showed up, and that's how we're now working together. So take the time and energy off of that, focus on the work. And then if you're looking for someone to bring on, I think number 1, producer, number 2, publicist.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, we're coming here towards the end of our interview, but I do want to ask you this question, and I know it's going to be a great story because it's you. What has been your most interesting or awkward Fringe interaction that you've had?
Okay, there's two. There's two. I'll go through them quickly. The first I'm going to say is the first time I did San Diego Fringe in 2016. My first show was at 11 a.m. on a Sunday. I had performed on Saturday night at 8:30 p.m. in Portland, Maine. And then I had a 2-woman show at the time, and the two of us were flying across the country, taking the latest flight possible to arrive in San Diego to perform our first show at 11 a.m. on Sunday. So 8:30 p.m. Saturday on the East Coast, 11 a.m. Sunday on the West Coast. But my performing partner and I, we just thought, no one's going to come. It's 11 a.m. We thought, well, we'll view the 11 a.m. performance in San Diego as a glorified tech. We'll run the show. We'll get our bearings. No one's going to be there. Who comes to a show, an unknown show, at 11 a.m. on a Sunday? Like, no one's going to do that. We got there, discovered that our theater was 98 seats. We were unknown artists. I was 20 years old at the time. Unknown artist, 98 seats. But we thought, again, glorified tech. And then what happened? 2 people showed up to watch the show. 98 seat theater, 2 people walked in, 11 a.m. on a Sunday. They sat in completely, it's not even like they sat together. Like one sat here, one sat there. And we were like, we now have to do the show. And the worst part, in the middle, one of them walked out.
Oh my gosh. You've done it. That was like your worst show ever. It's done and over.
No, it's done and over. We did a great show that day. I'm proud of the show that we did. And yes, somebody walked out in the middle, and that's okay. It wasn't their cup of tea. That's fine. But we did a great show that day. And you have to get out there and you have to perform no matter what. No matter what.
Yeah. You're so good. So good. Okay, what's your other story?
Okay, the other one is actually quite similar. I was performing at Edinburgh Fringe this year. It was a sold out show, 65 people on a Saturday night. And my show, again, as established, is not stand up. It's theater. So when it starts, it's a show. It's a show. It's a show. I'm not doing crowd work. It's a show. We sit, we watch. We sit, we watch. My theater was a 3/4 thrust with one door that was all the way in the far corner. So about 10 minutes into my show, 2 people come in with suitcases and beers. Okay. All right. And they're kind of hovering in the corner. So I stop and I'm like, no. I'm like, come in, come in, sit down. The only available seat is on the far opposite corner across the stage. And this is Fringe, right? So it's a 3/4 thrust, whatever. And that's the only seat available. There's one seat by the door and then there's one seat all the way across. And so one of the guys sits down with his suitcase and his beers by the door. And the other guy is kind of hovering. And I'm like, no, there's only one seat. It's right over there. So he has to walk across the entire stage with his suitcase and with his beer through the stage. So, and I have to stop the show to let this happen. So this happens. Anyways, I'm doing the show. As you may remember, the show has a climactic scene wherein I play a certain small rodent, a gerbil, and I am on my back and I am pushing with my legs and I'm moving my body across the stage, on my back, legs, climax, drama, music, lights, Liv throwing her body across the stage. And at this moment, the young man who was 10 minutes late to the show looked down at his watch, said out loud, "I have a train," stood up, took his suitcase, took his beer, and walked back across the entire stage. I am on the ground. I am legs up on my back, moving across the stage. And this guy with his freaking wheelie bag is he's stepping over me, basically. He's literally has to step over me. I'm moving. He goes to the thing. I have never... I think I made a joke about it later in the show. Thank God. I think I saved face a little bit, and I didn't care. It's Fringe. You have to be prepared for anything.
I love it. Well, Olivia, thank you so much for joining us today on What the Fringe. It's been such a delight to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Lauren. Delighted to be here, and I can't wait to see you at other festivals.
I know. That's going to be so much fun. Well, Faking It will be playing in New York City and Philadelphia in April, and will be at the San Diego Fringe in May. And Oops will be premiering at the Hollywood Fringe in June. Then both shows will hit New York City in July before both going to Edinburgh Fringe in August, where they will be performed back to back for a whole month. You can learn more about Olivia on her website at live-thedream.com. And you can keep up with Olivia on Instagram at live.thedream. What the Fringe is produced and hosted by me, Lauren Hantz. This episode was edited by Ben Ellis of Renowned Media, and those sweet tunes you hear provided by Paul Snyder of Orchestra of Sound, and our logo was designed by Ruby Arnold of Ruby Makes Things. What the Fringe can be found on your favorite podcast platforms and now on YouTube, so be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know when new episodes release. Keep up with What the Fringe on Instagram at whatthefringe_productions, and find us online at whatthefringeproductions.com. Never, ever, ever tell a Fringe artist that their show led you to the love of their life, because it will go to their head and they will be at the Fringe bar all night declaring,
Children will be born because of me.